首先呢，我们今天是在 Zoom， 也是在 Instagram 直播，所以呢，如果你的同事们、你的朋友们也想看到今天下午的活动，我们就建议给你们就是看一下我们的领事馆的 Instagram， 叫做 US Consulate Guangzhou. We are also again live streaming this entire presentation on our Instagram at US Consulate Guangzhou, and welcome you all to watch either there or continue here on our Zoom platform. 还有呢，我们还希望大家能看一下我们的意见反馈，我们就想知道你们是从哪里来参加今天的活动，然后你们可以给我们一些建议，你们觉得我们应该举行什么活动？Again, this is just a very quick survey, only 4 questions, and it's about recommendations you have, what types of programs that you would like us to organize, and other ways you think that we should engage with all of you, especially on the questions of student visas that you have. 好的，我们开始吧。First, I very much want to remind everyone that the United States continues to welcome legitimate Chinese students to study and to conduct research in the United States. As we saw in 2019-2020, the United States welcomed over 370,000 students to study at universities across the United States. We very much welcome them. 我首先想说，美国继续欢迎来自中国的学生到美国学习和进行研究。绝大多数的中国学生是基于正当的学术理由在美国学习，他们为美国多元化的思想和观点做出了许多贡献。我们非常欢迎他们。I also very quickly want to remind and let everyone know the various different measures that US universities across the United States are taking to support and protect the safety and welfare of students, both from all over the world who are in the United States studying and getting their degrees. These various measures include institutions across the United States. The vast majority have very clear communication campaigns about how they're supporting students during COVID. These other various different ways in which they're supporting their students, both of course, American students and international students, include about 58% of schools, they are offering enrollment in online classes for students that have been affected by the COVID pandemic. About 40% of schools are allowing students to defer enrollment to spring 2021 or beyond. And about 10% of schools have provided or offered refunds to students who were affected in their ability to further their studies because of the COVID pandemic. 我再次想用中文说，就是美国校园他们有什么措施帮助来自中国的学生跟所有的学生们，就是新冠疫情的时候，因为他们针对好多不同的问题，我想跟大家说一下，我们可以看到，对于无法在2020年前往美国的国际学生，就是58%的院校提供了在线课程，还有40%的院校重数推迟到2021年春季或者以后入学，还有呢10%的院校提供了退款。Again, please look at the various universities you're interested in studying, where you're interested in going to study, to see what they have done in the COVID-19 pandemic response. 还有一个很重要的一个问题，好多老师们跟学生们会问我们一下，我要去美国学习，但是呢，我不知道是否我要打不打疫苗。A very important question we get asked all the time. Do I need a vaccine to go to the United States for studying? Currently, every university has a different response to this question. Our first answer to this is to first look at the university where you're planning to study and look at their requirements related to vaccines. We know now that more than 100 universities are requiring a vaccine. However, they have resources to support all students, this includes international students, to get the vaccine when they get to campus. The one university on screen is just one example. Again, we recommend you look at the various universities that you're interested in attending or the one that you have received an offer from to decide whether or not you will need to get a vaccine. Currently, to enter the United States, you do need to show a negative COVID test, but the vaccine is not required. 所以呢，我们的建议就是看一下你们想去什么学校，他们可以告诉你你需要打不打疫苗，然后这是一个例子，他们可以告诉你你到美国，他们可以就帮助你找哪个疫苗开始学习。最后呢 Finally, a very important slide and a question that we receive from parents, students, and teachers. And we get asked about safety for students studying in the United States because they have concerns or fears, questions, and they are worried about the safety of Asian and Asian American students. And I point to this slide. This is from the White House and a statement that was released about in the end of March from President Biden, his actions that were announced to respond to anti-Asian violence, xenophobia, and bias. So I encourage you to read more into what the US government continues to do to combat this issue. I would also encourage you to look at all the universities that you're applying to and the many measures they are taking to protect and ensure the inclusion of students from all over the world in their studies. So this is a very important topic, and thank you all so much for listening and hearing more about this issue. Finally, 最后呢，如果你们想知道我们就是会举行什么活动，在领事馆跟我们的晚上的活动，你可以关注我们的社交媒体，我们有微信跟微博，你可以看一下，就是我们的教育办公室的微信 Education USA， 还有我们的领事馆的微博可以看一下。Finally, we encourage you all to follow us on our various social media platforms from our Education USA WeChat, Weibo, as well as Instagram. And many of you are watching right now on our Instagram Live to learn more and get updates related to studying in the United States, Education USA, and student visas. And now, because I know all of you want to hear more and learn more about the student visa process, I will turn it over to our next section. 所以呢，我很想欢迎我们来自美国驻广州总领事馆的非移民签证处副主任 Adam Ferguson， 他会谈一下学生签证的问题。It's now my great pleasure to welcome to this program our U.S. Consulate Guangzhou Consular Section, our non-immigrant visa deputy, Adam Ferguson, to answer your questions and talk about the student visa application process. And please put your questions for him in the chat box. 谢谢大家。
All right. Sure, we're here we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our event here. I'm really happy to see so many people are joining us. I'm really happy to be able to answer your questions about student visas. As Tyler mentioned, my name is Adam Ferguson. I am the Deputy NIV Chief, Deputy Non-Immigrant Visa Chief here at the Consulate in Guangzhou. I'm going to turn my time over to my friend Dana to translate into Chinese.
欢迎大家，很高兴大家参加这个活动，让我回答学生签证的问题。正如刚才 Tyler Brand 所说的，我是美国驻广州总领事馆非移民签证处的副主任冯家树，然后期待跟大家回答大家的问题。
Okay, so the first thing that I want to tell everybody is welcome. As my colleague mentioned, the United States is eager to welcome legitimate students to come and study in the United States. The United States is the top destination of international students worldwide. As you can see on the slide, 53% of international students came from China and India, with most coming from China. In the United States, 5% of all of the students are international students, contributing $40 billion to the US economy.
首先我想说的是，美国欢迎中国学生。美国是全球首选高等教育目的地，有数以千计的优质大学可供选择。来自中国的国际留学生高达35%。在2019年，美国大学里超过5%是国际留学生，为美国经济带来400亿美元的收入。
Okay, this next slide, there are 6 steps to applying for a student visa to study in the United States. The first is you have to be admitted to a school, a university in the United States. After you are admitted to a university in the US, you'll receive what's called an I-20 form. You will pay 2 fees. The first is your SEVIS fee that you pay to US Customs and Immigration. After you pay that fee, you'll pay your visa application fee. You'll schedule an appointment to come to the consulate and have your visa interview. After your visa is approved, then you will go to the United States. You'll register with your school.
接下来大家可以看到的页面是赴美留学签证申请的6个步骤。首先，您需要申请学校，等到学校录取了，提交文件，准备 I-20 表格。在学校获得 I-20 表格之后，您需要支付2个费用，一个是向美国海关与移民事务局支付 SEVIS 费用，另外一个是支付签证申请费，并预约一个时间来美国领事馆面谈，然后准备并通过签证面谈。获得签证之后，您可以进入美国国境，并在学校注册。
Okay, so there are 2 steps to prepare for your visa interview at the consulate. The first thing that we ask that you do is go to the website ceac.gov, ceac.gov. At that website, you'll fill out the DS-160 form. You'll answer questions about yourself. After that, you will go to ustraveldocs.com and you'll pay the visa fee, and then you'll schedule your interview to come into the consulate.
接下来，您需要为签证面谈做好准备。首先，在国务院官方网站 ceac.state.gov 填写完整并准确的 DS-160 申请表，然后在签证申请服务预约中心 ustraveldocs.com 缴纳签证费，并预约面谈时间。
Okay, how early should you apply for your interview? The easy answer is we want you to apply early, but we cannot issue the visa until 120 days before the start date on your I-20 form. So once it's within 120 days, we can issue the visa. Sometimes people come in a little bit before 120 days. That's okay, but we aren't able to issue the visa until you're within that 120 days.
最早需要什么时候来申请面谈呢？最容易的答案就是尽早申请。但是早于 I-20 表格上标注的学术项目开始时间120天的申请，我们是无法批准的。当然，您可以在这120天前申请，我们只能在120天内才可以签发您的签证。
What documents do you need to bring with you? One thing you definitely need to bring with you is your passport with 6 months validity at least. You need to bring your I-20 form that you will receive from the university. A lot of students bring their SEVIS fee receipt with them. It's helpful if you bring your school acceptance letter. Some people bring their DS-160 confirmation page. Beyond that, it's really up to you. The consular officer may ask to see different documents. For example, a resume, a study plan, advisor information for those of you going for graduate degrees. And if the consular officer asks to see those documents, then you need to provide those. And you can either bring them in person or you can send them later. At some point, they will ask that you email everything in digitally, even if you've brought them in person.
需要去美国领事馆办理签证面谈需要带什么文件呢？首先，有效的护照，这是最重要的。 最少要有6个月以上的有效期。当然还有大学出具的 SEVIS I-20 表格，然后是 SEVIS 费用的收据，这个是非常有用、非常重要的。还有是学校录取通知书，还有的是 DS160 申请表的确认页。一些签证处的签证官可能会需要看到您的简历、学习计划。如果您是申请硕士学位的话，您需要带上简历、学习计划，还有美国那方的导师的资料。您可以在面谈的时候带过来，也有可能在面谈过后，签证官会让您从邮件里面再发过来给我们。
So what is a qualified student? There really are not that many rules. First, you need to demonstrate that you're a bona fide student, that you're going to be pursuing a full course of study in the United States. Second, you have to demonstrate that you have sufficient English proficiency to be able to succeed in school in the United States, that your purpose in entering the United States is only to study. And then you have to be able to demonstrate that you can pay for the studies without working in the United States. And then this also says be able to explain your living arrangements, which is also similar. You have to be able to show that you have sufficient funding to pay for your school expenses and your living expenses.
怎么样才算一个合格的学生？其实没有那么多的规定。首先，您需要证明您是一个符合条件的真正的全日制学生，证明您的英语水平能够完成学习任务，证明您在美国属于短暂逗留，并且赴美的唯一目的是学习。另外，还需要证明您有能力支付学费和生活费。接下来就是能够阐明您留学时的住宿安排。
Okay, as this slide says, honesty is the best policy. Come in and be prepared to tell the consular officer your story, and be prepared to tell the consular officer your true story. There's a lot of advice out there that people have that may or may not be accurate. One thing would really like to caution everybody to avoid would be to exaggerate your qualifications. And the other thing would be to avoid omitting information or leaving information out so as to make yourself appear more qualified. Applicants that are caught doing those things frequently will jeopardize the issuance of a visa.
接下来这个页面就是诚信为上，请在前来面谈之前准备好，告诉我们您的真实故事。现在有很多中介或者是网上的论坛，有各种所谓的忠告和建议，但是他们都不一定是准确的，有些时候夸大其词，夸大您的符合签证的资格，这样也会堕入误区，有可能会被拒签。
Okay, there's really no set amount of money that you have to have in your bank account. All you have to show is that you have sufficient funding to pay for your studies and a plan for how you're going to pay for your studies.
没有规定您在面谈时银行账户里需要有多少存款，唯一的要求就是您必须有足够的资金支付第1年的费用，且有一个可信的计划，证明您如何支付在美留学期间的所有费用。
So the visa officers will be conducting the interviews in English to see if you have sufficient English proficiency. Of course, our officers realize that you may not have perfect English. Really, what they need to determine is if your English is proficient enough for you to succeed to study in the United States. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We encourage you not to memorize lines for your interview, and that's because we are trying to get your story from you, and we want to be able to determine the level of proficiency of your English. And when you come in with memorized lines, that just slows that process down.
签证官明白，不是所有的国际学生在赴美前都能说流利的英文。签证官在面谈的时候，需要去看一下您的英文是不是到了足够的水平，可以在美国读书，可以成功的上课。所以，我们希望申请人不要为了面谈而死记硬背，这样会让警示签证官无法去辨别您的英语水平，这样有可能会导致延误了您的申请。
Okay, here are some more websites that you can visit for more information. As Tyler mentioned earlier, this presentation will be available for you after, so you don't have to frantically write these websites down now.
这个页面呢是关于您需要看到的一些网站的更多信息。刚才 Tyler 有提到，这些信息都会在这个活动之后会给到大家，所以您不需要在这个活动期间去把它抄下来。
Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. Now I will answer your questions. It looks like there's quite a few already that are queued up here. So I'm just going to start at the top and start scrolling through.
这里是我们今天展示的一个介绍的结尾，然后呢，我会回答你们的问题。看来已经有很多提问在线上了，那我就从第一个开始吧。
Okay, so the first question, again, I'm not going to be able to answer everybody's individual visa situation. I'll try to make it more general. The first question is, for those of you who have traveled to Singapore and had a visa interview there, can you then return to China and interview again? That's, sorry, I'll allow my colleague to translate.
首先需要再强调一下，我无法回答你们每一个具体案件的问题，所以我会将我的答案保持在比较能够针对基本的案件或者基本的情况。首先第一个问题就是我在新加坡申请了，但是一直都没有结果，我能回到中国申请吗？
The answer is that you can apply as many times as you would like to. It's really up to you. With the caveat that the situation will probably be very similar each place that you interview. So it's really just, it's your decision. If you want to apply again in China, you are welcome to.
回答是，您可以申请，这是您自己的决定。但是您申请的情况可能在不同的，即便是您在不同的地方申请，您的申请情况也应该差不多是一样的，所以您可以自己决定。如果您需要再次申请的话，也欢迎您申请。
Okay, the next question is about the I-20. Can students use a printed out version of the I-20 for the visa appointment?
第二个问题是 I-20 表格的问题，学生可以用 I-20 表格的打印出来的文件申请美国签证吗？
So the answer to that is you can use a printed out version of your I-20 for your visa appointment. When you enter the United States, you'll need to show the version that's been signed by both you and the school.
答案是，您可以用打印出来的 I-20 表格申请美国签证。当您入境美国的时候，您需要出示 I-20，同时是 I-20 需要您跟学校官方签名的。
Okay, it looks like there are a couple questions asking about parents and parents' jobs. Sorry, I'll let my colleague.
接下来的问题，看来有好几个问题都是问关于父母的工作。
So the answer is that consular officers during the interview try to take a holistic view of the applicant. We will ask you about your plans. We'll ask you about your funding. We'll ask you about your parents and your parents' jobs. The short answer is that your parents' jobs will never result in a refusal of your visa. They may delay the issuance of your visa for a while.
答案是在面谈的过程中，领事签证官会综合考虑您是否符合签证的各种因素。他们会问您的学习计划、您的资金来源，会问关于您父母的信息、父母工作的信息。但是父母的工作不会导致学生签证被拒签，但是有可能会延迟学生申请的这个审核。
Okay, bear with me while I read this. This next question is a little bit long.
请原谅我，这个问题有点长。
Okay, so this next question is asking about the start date at the university and how early can you get to the United States?
这个问题是问关于项目开始的时间，还有可以最早能够什么时候进入美国。
So currently in China, there are still presidential proclamations in place that prevent us from issuing student visas before August, with start dates before August 1st, unless you have a specific national interest exception to those presidential proclamations. Currently, we are able to approve student visas with start dates after August 1st, and students are able to enter the United States after July 2nd, or 30 days before their program's start date. So if your I-20 has a start date before August 1st, and you don't have an exception, a national interest exception to this presidential proclamation, then the consular officer will not be able to issue your visa until your I-20 is changed to show a start date after August 1st.
目前在中国，一些总统公告还是有效的。目前我们只能签发学术项目在8月1号或之后开始的学生的签证，除非您是获得了国家利益豁免。所以现在，如果您的学术项目是在8月1日或之后开始的，您最早不能早于8月2号进入美国，那就是在您的学术项目开始之前的30天。但是如果您的 I-20 表格上面的学术项目开始时间是8月1日之前，而且您也并没有获得国家利益豁免，那签证官是不能签发您的签证，只能等到您的 I-20 上面的开始时间被修改过来之后，才可以考虑。
The next question is asking how early a person can enter the United States.
下面一个问题是，最早可以什么时候进入美国？
The answer is that you can enter the United States up to 30 days before your program start date?
答案是您可以在学术项目开始之前的30天内进入美国。
Okay, give me 1 second. This next question is a little bit long.
这个问题有点长，请给我时间看看。
Getting a lot of questions about INA 243D. And the answer, sorry, I'll let my colleague. I keep forgetting.
有好几个问题都是问243D 条款的。
I don't have much to add on this topic other than to say that your parents' jobs will not prevent you from getting a visa. They won't result in a refusal of your visa. They may just delay the issuance of your visa for a time.
关于这个问题，我没有很多可以回答的，就是父母的工作不会妨碍或者导致学生签证的被拒签，但是它有可能会延误学生签证的申请，可能会延迟。
So I have a question here about Presidential Proclamation 10043. This presidential proclamation can be found at whitehouse.gov if you want to. Oh, I need to, sorry. The text of this proclamation can be found at whitehouse.gov. It is the law of the United States, and so the consular sections in Mission China do follow this presidential proclamation.
有个问题是问总统公告10043，大家可以访问白宫的网站 whitehouse.gov 去看细节。这是美国的法律，中国以及中国区的领事、各使领馆都在遵守着这里的上面所说的规定。
Okay, next question is the consulate in Guangzhou open normally this week?
下面一个问题是，广州这个星期是正常开放吗？广州领事馆。
The answer is that the consulate is open. We are having our normal interview hours.
答案是这个星期美国驻广州总领事馆是正常开放的，我们的正常的对外时间也是如往常一样。
So there's a question here asking about if you have graduated in 2019, can you waive the visa interview if your I-20 ended after graduation? If you've graduated in 2019, can a student waive the visa interview if their I-20 ended after graduation?
这个问题是，如果申请人是在2019年毕业的，他可以申请不面谈吗？如果他的 I-20是变成了硕士研究生的那个学位的。
The answer is that students are eligible for the interview waiver program in China. You can go to the consulate website or to ustraveldocs.com to find out the restrictions on those. I don't know for sure whether that's been turned on yet or not, but but that should be able to answer your question as to whether you need to come in for a visa interview or not.
这个问题您可以到我们的官网去看一下。这个问题是问可不可以豁免，就是不需要钱来面谈。您可以看一下官网上面关于免面谈待传递的相关信息。
Give me just a second to find some questions here. Okay, so the question is, during the interview with PhD students, what are officers looking for from the resume and study plan?
关于申请博士后，关于申请博士学位的学生签证申请，签证官通常会在其简历或者是学习计划上面去看一些什么信息呢？
The answer is that officers are usually interested in looking at the documents that you provided to the school to get admitted into the program.
通常，签证官会想要看到学校的一些文件，是你怎么样会被学校录取的。关于您被学校录取的一些相关信息。
Okay, there's a question here asking about if a particular type of research would be beneficial for visa applications. The United States welcomes STEM students of all types to come study in the United States. Really it is up to the university to admit you and to admit you into the program at the university. And once you have an I-20 for that program, then the visa officer will conduct the interview to determine whether you're qualified as a student.
这个问题是问，有没有特定一些研究是对学生签证是有利的？这里的答案是我们都随时欢迎不同的学生前往美国读书，只要是学校录取了您，并且只要学校录取了您，然后您收到了学校签发的 I-20，我们可以跟您进行面谈。
Hello, everyone. I'm back to answer a few questions that I've seen in the chat box related to the COVID situation and vaccines. 大家好，我回来了。我想回答一些关于疫情，然后新冠疫情这个问题。The first question, again, is reiterating about the vaccines. People are asking these questions and want to know more. Do I need to get the vaccine for my studies in the United States? The answer, again, is that you should check with the university that you plan to attend about their requirements. They should have more information for you about getting the vaccine. 你这个打不打疫苗的问题，我们的建议就是看一下你要去什么学校、什么大学，他们会告诉你是否你还现在要打疫苗。所有的大学，就是美国有4000多的大学都有不同的规定。我们现在就要超过100个学校，现在你必须得打。Again, look at their website. They will have more information on the requirements. And if they do have a requirement, many universities, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, have more information whether or not you need one and how you can get one. And I'm going back to that slide right now. 现在你可以看一下。Another question is whether or not the consulate, as Adam answered, it is still open. And I would like to reiterate that the consulate is currently abiding by local public health guidelines as it relates to coming into the consulate to apply for your visa. This includes things like social distancing, encouraging mask wearing, and any changes to this policy. We encourage everyone to go to the website of the US consulate and to check our different social media platforms to learn more information about this upcoming or any changing guidelines related to public health in applying for your student visa. 所以呢，就是来美国驻广州总领事馆申请一个签证，我们现在如果我们会改变我们的规定，你应该看一下我们的网站，然后我们的社交媒体。So again, continue to look up that information as you prepare to come to the consulate for your interview. Finally, another specific question, you do not currently need to show a negative COVID test to come to the consulate so that you can apply for your student visa. But again, we encourage you to continue to look at the most updated information online and on the social media platforms that we have. Finally, there was a question about going to the United States. Do you need to quarantine? 最后一个问题，一个人问我们是否你去美国的时候你要隔离14天吗？我们的回答就是你要看一下你要去什么州，你要去什么大学，这个大学是在什么州，每个州的隔离要求是不一样的，所以你应该看一下。如果你有对这个隔离的问题，你应该跟这个大学问一下，你们的州有什么要求，有什么规定，我要看一下。That is all for now related to COVID, related to applying for visas. But again, as I've stated in the past, I am not a public health professional. However, we provide more information related to CDC guidelines, Centers for Disease Control guidelines, for going to the US on our social media platforms frequently for you all to learn more. 好的，现在我可以邀请我的同事 Adam， 他会再次回答你的关于签证的问题。Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you asking these very important questions. 好的。
Okay, next question. If a visa application is completed and a new school offer is received, can I use the new school I-20 plus the original visa, or is there a need to apply for a new visa?
下一个问题是，如果我的签证申请已经完成了，但是这个时候我收到了另外一个学校的新的 I-20，那我需要重新申请一个新的签证吗？
The answer is that you do not need to apply for a new visa. If you have a current valid visa, just make sure that you carry your original I-20 with you when you go to the United States.
回答是，您不需要重新申请一个新的签证，只要您在赴美时，在入境时需要出示您的新的 I-20 表格，您可以带上您现有的有效的签证和您的新 I-20 赴美。
Next question. For those that have received an I-20 but have not started a visa application, will it affect their future visas if they decide not to attend a university in the United States?
这个问题是，如果收到了 I-20，但是请稍等一下。
So the question is, students that have received an I-20 but have not yet applied for a visa, will that affect their future visas if they decide not to attend university in the United States?
不好意思这个问题是，如果收到了 I-20，但是并没有申请签证，那这样会不会对我造成影响？如果我以后决定不去美国读书？
The answer is that it will not affect your future visa application. And if you decide that you don't want to study in the United States right now, it will have no impact in the future. And you can decide to study in the US in the future or not study in the US at all.
这个问题的答案是，它不会影响您以后的签证申请。如果您现在 如果您以后想要在美国读书，您可以继续申请。当然，您也可以选择不去美国读书。
So the next question is asking about students that have been refused visas and whether they can apply again, whether they can apply for a visa a second time.
这个问题是一个学生被拒签了，他的学生签证申请被拒签了，他还可以再申请第二次吗？
And the answer is that you can apply for a visa as many times as you would like to.
答案是可以，您可以继续申请学生签证，多少次也不会有影响。
Next question is, can I apply for a visa interview in Guangzhou if I was refused in Beijing?
这个问题是问，如果我在北京被拒签了，我可以在广州申请吗？
And the answer is that you can apply in Guangzhou. You can apply anywhere in Mission, China, and you can apply as many times as you would like.
答案是您可以在中国任何一个使领馆申请，次数也没有限定。
So there's a few questions asking about the earliest that students can enter the United States. And so the question is, how early can I enter the United States?
这里有几个问题都是问最早我可以什么时候进入美国？
And the answer is you can travel to the United States within 30 days of your program's start date. So for example, if your program start date is August 1st, you can enter the United States after July 2nd.
回答是您可以在您学术项目开始之前的30天内赴美。打个比方，如果您的学术项目是8月1日开始的，那您可以在7月2日或之后进入美国。
All right, next question is, what should I do if my program doesn't have an advisor?
下面一个问题是，如果我的项目没有导师，该怎么办呢？
So if your program doesn't have an advisor, you need to be very clear with the visa officer that your program doesn't have an advisor.
如果是这样的话，您需要在面谈的时候告诉签证官，您的这个学术项目并没有指导，并没有导师。
There's no requirement that a student have an advisor to get a student visa. But if you do have an advisor, you should be prepared to share that information with the officer.
并没有规定说您必须要有导师才可以获得一个学生签证，但是如果您有导师的话，请在面谈时告诉签证官。
Next question is 6-month validity. What does 6-month validity on your passport mean?
下一个问题是关于护照的这个6个月有效期的问题。
And the answer is 6 months from the time that you enter the US.
答案是这个护照必须是有效的，在您进入美国之后，需要至少有效6个月。
So there's a question here about administrative processing and how long does administrative processing take, and if there's any way to speed up that process.
这个问题是关于行政处理，行政处理一般需要多长时间？有没有方法可以加快呢？
Administrative processing means that the interviewing officer needs some additional information from you or needs to do some additional checks on your visa before he can issue the visa. It can take anywhere from, currently it's taking anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do to speed up that process. So we encourage you to apply early to make sure that you don't miss your program start date.
需要行政处理的案件意味着领事签证官需要您提供更多的文件，或者需要针对您的案件进行额外的审核。目前来说，这个行政处理需要6到8周的时间，但是很遗憾，我们没有办法加快，所以我们鼓励学生尽快申请，以便您可以及时赴美参加您的学术项目。
All right, next question is, how can we demonstrate English proficiency?
下面一个问题是我们怎么样去证明我们的英语水平呢？
The answer is that the visa interview will be conducted in English. They'll ask you questions in English about your background, about your study plans, about your future goals regarding this visa. And if you're able to communicate clearly to them in English, then your English is proficient enough.
这个签证面谈一般情况下会以英文进行，签证官会问您的背景、学习计划，还有未来的目标。如果您可以顺利的用英文跟签证官阐述这些信息，那您就有足够的英语可以赴美学习。
So the next question is, this student has an F1 visa that is still valid, but there's no national interest exception annotation on the visa. And they want to know if they can still travel directly from China to the US.
下一个问题是，申请人这个学生有 F1 签证，并且还是有效的，但是没有 NIE， 就是国家利益豁免的相关备注在签证上面。那这位学生还可以用这个签证赴美吗？
The answer is that if your program start date is after August 1st, then you can travel directly from China to the United States, even if your visa doesn't have a national interest exception annotation.
回答是，只要您的学术项目是在8月1号或之后开始的，那您可以凭这个签证赴美，即使签证上面并没有国家利益豁免的备注。
Okay, so we'll do 2 more questions. The next one is a question about a national interest exception. If there's a valid F1 visa without a national interest exception, the program starts after August, can the student fly directly to the United States after July 2nd?
这个问题是持有有效的签证，但是并没有获得国家利益豁免，但是他的项目是在8月1日之后开始的，他可以凭这个签证在7月2号之后赴美吗？
The answer is that after August 1st, F1 applicants no longer need to have a separate national interest exception. So they don't need to contact the consulate for a national interest exception.
回答是，只要在8月1日之后 ，F1 学生就不需要再获得国家利益豁免了，他们也不需要联系签证处获得这个国家利益豁免的信函或者是信息。
All right, I'm going to look for a question we haven't answered already. So we have a question from Instagram. How to define program start date on the I-20. For returning students, the start date is not always in 2021.
这个问题是来自 Instagram 的，是怎么样去辨别 I-20上面的项目的开始时间呢？那对于续签的返签的学生，他的项目开始时间不一定总是2021年的。
The answer is, if you are a returning student, you can return anytime after July 2nd. And we're considering your program start date to be the date that your in-person classes start for the next semester.
对于返签的学生，您可以在7月2号之后赴美。这个是界定于是在于您是要亲自去到在下个学期亲自在教室里面上课的那个时间。
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate all of your questions.
谢谢大家，感谢大家给我提问。
再次感谢我的同事 Adam， 就是回答好多关于学生签证的问题。Thank you so much, Adam. We really appreciate you taking the time to answer many questions and explaining the student visa application process. Before we conclude, I have just a few final reminders. 最后呢，我希望大家能看一下我们的意见反馈，我们就想知道你们想看一下就是什么样子的活动，所以这是一个设立的一个反馈。我们想知道你们是首先从什么地方来的参加，然后你们有什么建议给我们。Again, we appreciate everyone taking the time to fill out this online survey. It's only 4 questions, and it gives us a better idea of where everyone is joining these programs from. And as well, we want your recommendations, suggestions on what kinds of programs you would like to see from the US Consulate so that we can organize them in the future. I would also like to point out, I will go again to the slide that we have the social media platforms of the Consulate. Again, we encourage you to follow them if you're not already, which includes our Education USA WeChat group, as well as our Weibo. And as we mentioned, again, thank you everyone on Instagram for joining our Instagram page, US Consulate Guangzhou. We encourage you to join that as well. And again, I'll go back to that slide for everyone to see. 我们也希望你们可以看一下我们的社交媒体，包括我们的教育办公室微信，我们的领事馆的微博，还有我们的 Instagram， 你可以看一下我们的活动，就是 Instagram 直播 US Consulate Guangzhou. Finally, I would just like to point out a few programs that we have coming up. In addition to programs on student visas, we frequently host events both online and in person at the consulate. That's a photo of the US Consulate, where we have programs frequently. Throughout June, the majority of our events will be online, so many of you can participate no matter where you're joining from. First, more information can be found at these websites to learn more about and to ask questions related to student visas if your question was not answered today. 如果你还有什么关于你的学生签证的问题，您该看一下这样的我们的网站，就是 ustraveldocs.com， 还有我们的美国驻广州总领事馆的网站，都应该看一下。最后呢，我们还有什么问题？还有什么未来我们还会举行什么活动？你可以看一下。What we have coming up for online events, again, on our same Zoom platform. We look forward to you all joining from the June 12th. We have an event, apologies, going back to that slide. We are very excited to welcome an American astronaut who will be speaking about his journey to space. And he will be talking about many different topics, including what it's like in space during his space flight. This program is taking place on